Lucky to have the Education Secretary Gavin Williamson with us on the programme this morning. Good morning, good morning. One of those kids saying it's too easy. It's going to be too easy.
Well, I accept that there'll be criticism that way, but I feel what we've done is we put a package of things together that's really fair for children. I mean, I know having a 16-year-old who's facing her GCSEs this year, who's had to self-isolate during this term, it's about making sure that there's a real fair set of packages for students, just so they can do the very best for themselves, make sure they can actually achieve the very best grade that they really are capable of doing so.
But how do you level it? Because, you know, kids say in Cornwall, Tier 1, they're going to school almost every day, whereas kids up in Tier 3, Manchester, up in the North East as well, less so. Their classes are being closed, they're having to go home again. So it's, how do you make it fair for everybody?
Well, this is why we've put this package of measures together, quite an exceptional package of measures, whether it's the announcements we made a number of weeks ago about moving exams back to give children extra learning time so they can have the opportunity to catch up, whether it's the extra £1 billion that we've given to schools so they can give children extra lessons, not just within the school day, but outside of the school day as well. But the extra measures we've announced today about the generosity in grading, making sure that children have the best chance to achieve the very best possible grade, but also the measures to ensure that they have advance notice of the topics that they're going to be questioned on. They have exam aids with formula sheets to ensure that if they have missed out on some of that learning, they've got the information there so they can use that information to do the very best, so they can really focus in their revision on the topics that are going to matter and that are going to make a big difference. And we think this is why we've spent the time working with teachers, working with schools, but also, really importantly, listening to pupils to hear from what they have to say about what would help them to do really well in exams and actually be able to catch up where they've missed out.
Can you give us a cast iron guarantee that exams will not be cancelled?
Absolutely. And what you're aware of, but many of your viewers probably haven't actually been aware of, is even during this national lockdown, we've been running GCSE exams, A-Level exams, and tens of thousands of students have been taking those GCSE and A-Level exams all the way through that national lockdown. And that's been done safely and securely and successfully. So I have every confidence if we've been able to run a whole set of exams for GCSEs and A-Levels during a national lockdown, we have every ability to run those same set of exams in the summer of next year. If
they've got all these aids, they will undoubtedly get better grades. Surely that just means that universities will up the levels of exam results that you need to get in?
Well, we've been working very closely with Universities UK and the Russell Group of universities and all those universities who are really wanting to open their doors and welcome students. They want to be welcoming as many of those students through those doors, and we'll be continuing to work.
There's only a finite number of places, though, aren't there?
There are a finite number of places, but what they will see with children being able to sit exams, there's a lot more rigour within the system than we saw last year when children weren't in a position to be able to take those exams.
And what are you going to do to make sure that that happens, that universities don't make it even more difficult to get in?
Well, we've been working with universities. Universities understand there's a real obligation on them to especially welcome students from more disadvantaged backgrounds where maybe students wouldn't have historically looked at going to universities. And we've seen an increase in the number of students going to university last year, and we expect probably a similar increase in the number of students going to university next year. Universities have been able to expand their places and welcome in more students over the last year. I'm confident that they're able to do the same next.
Universities that are already, students I should say, already at university this year, some of them not going back until February, but they still have to pay their rent. Yeah. So that can't be fair.
So the overwhelming majority of students will be going back during January. We've taken the tough decision to make sure it's a staggered and staged return. All students, when they get back to university, will be offered a sort of non-symptomatic test for COVID to make sure we do everything to ensure their health, but also their friends and the community's health as well. But most students will be returning during the January. All those students who have practical lessons that they have to do, whether those training to be doctors, nurses, engineers. 40% of those students will be turning absolutely as normal, and then over the following 4 or 5 weeks, all of the students will be done there. But it's really important.
What about February?
As we're rolling out the testing for every student, is making sure that there's a steady flow of students coming into the university, so those sort of tests can be administered.
Yeah, but my question is, what about those that are going back in February, can't go back until February? They still have to pay their rent. You know, students are notoriously as poor as church mice. That can't be fair.
Well, that's why we announced an extra £20 million to support students who need that extra bit of help, who are suffering as a consequence of
So they can use that money, they can appeal for that money directly?
Yeah, so £20 million is going to be distributed to universities to help students affected by this.
So students that are not going back until February can benefit from that amount of money?
Yeah, there's £20 million that's being put there to support.
OK, what's the dropout rate like?
Well, at the moment, we haven't got the data in terms of dropout rates. We're very confident that we've been putting so much effort into reducing dropout rates over the last few years, and the Office for Students, which is the regulator of universities, is working very closely with universities to make sure that it's obviously within the students' interest, but equally very much within the university's interest as well, to keep students in university. This is why we've protected education settings, whether it's schools, colleges or universities, keeping them open during a national lockdown, because we recognise that if students are dropping out, they're missing out on some amazing life chances.
Can we talk about the vaccine, if we may? Can we completely rule out another national lockdown?
Well, none of us want to see a national lockdown, and none of us expect to see a national lockdown. And with the fact that we're going to be rolling out a vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, before Christmas, and we had such promising sort of progress on the AstraZeneca University of Oxford vaccine, with 100 million doses of that vaccine going to be heading our way once it's got regulatory approval. I have every confidence that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and this should go, people continue to take that responsible approach of the British people have shown all the way through this pandemic. I have every confidence that we won't be seeing another national lockdown.
OK. We did hear from the Prime Minister and also, indeed, from the Health Secretary yesterday, both saying that we'll be out of this by the spring. We need 2 vaccinations, don't we? So are you confident that the whole nation will have had 2 vaccinations by the spring?
Well, what we're seeing is that we're targeting those who are most vulnerable, those people who are most likely to be in hospital and who most likely be affected in terms of their surviving COVID. So quite rightly, we're targeting those people first. I'm confident that with the rollout of the vaccine, especially targeted at those vulnerable people, we'll be in a position where we will defeat this virus, and we will have defeated the virus by the spring, yes.
Yeah. Will everybody in the nation have had 2 vaccinations by the spring?
Well, it's over the coming months, we're going to see the rollout. Further plans will be outlined. It'd be wrong of me to preempt that announcement of all those plans and the announcement of regulatory approval for other vaccines until that's been firstly got through the regulatory approval stage and those plans have been outlined to the House of Commons.
Would you have a vaccine live on telly? It seems to be the trend at the moment.
Well, when it's my turn...
Be careful what you say, because it may make you do it here.
Well, I'm sure your viewers have better things to watch than me having a vaccine live on TV. And by the time it gets to my turn to have a vaccine, I imagine I'll be pretty far down the pecking order, as there's a lot more important people to have a vaccine before me. But if you really think your viewers would be that interested to see me have a vaccine, I'm sure I would do it. But I think
make a note of that for me,
I think it would drive down your viewing figures. It would be so uninteresting to so many people, and so many people would have had it.
We'll be the judge of that. Let me talk to you about takeaways in so-called wet pubs. Can you do it or not?
Takeaway.
Can you have a takeaway ordered to a wet pub? So if you don't serve food in the pub, can you order a takeaway and drink it and eat in the pub?
You should always be eating the food in the pub, as I know I've got many brilliant pubs in my constituency, and I know that they always have a rule of making sure that you eat food that you purchase on the premises.
But what if they don't sell food on the premises? Can you order a takeaway?
Well, there's got to be a substantial meal with the pub,
but can you order it?
The pub's really got to be providing that meal, yes.
OK, so if you can't order a takeaway and and have it delivered to the pub.
But the pub's got to be providing that meal.
OK, what about if the landlord buys it?
Well, if the pub is providing that meal via the landlord, I'm sure that would be the case. But it's about the pub providing the substantial meal with the alcohol. OK,
so the landlord could order the takeaway for you. That's interesting. And as far as Brexit is concerned, quick thought on that, if you wouldn't mind. How are the negotiations going? I ask all of your colleagues all of the time. We really are drinking in the last chance saloon, if I can continue on with the theme.
Well, we always expect negotiations to go up to the wire. It's a very typical sort of situation when you're sort of having a negotiation with the European Union. But the fact that negotiations continue to go, I'm confident that from what I hear, that good progress has been made. But we are going to do a deal that's right for Britain if such a deal is available. But if such a deal isn't available, then we're not going to sign up to something that's to our detriment. Reshuffle coming, how confident are you of keeping your job? You could be Health Secretary next, and then you definitely will have to have your jab on the telly. Well, as I say, I don't want to damage your viewing figures by having my vaccination done on television, but everyone's focus in actually delivering on the issues and on their portfolio. So my focus is making sure that children, wherever they live in the country, get the very best education. And we've seen the full return of school since September. We saw 1.6 million children going to school before the summer. That's our focus, driving up standards. We've got so much that we're doing in terms of skills, in terms of our further education colleges, the amazing work that our universities are doing, whether it's developing new vaccines or making sure that 50% of children that go to university get the very best education. That's where our focus is on, not speculation.
Finally, I know that you have family experience of concerns about COVID. What does that mean for you at Christmas time? It's a challenge for everybody, I know.
Like so many people, we're sort of not quite sure. I think it's really good that we've got this set of guidelines where people can have the opportunity to be able to mix with families, but it's about doing it responsibly. And we're sort of still
trying. You haven't decided yet?
We haven't decided. My mum, is one of those who, is vulnerable as my dad, as getting a little bit older, and you're always wanting to put their safety first. But like so many of us, you're just sort of so desperate to see family, as so many of us have gone for so long without spending that time with our loved ones.
Michael Gove's invited me round for Christmas. I could have a word if you like.
I couldn't really compete with that, but you're very welcome to come up to Wolverhampton and spend Christmas with the Williamson family. If you want to be part of our Christmas bubble, more than welcome.
Oh, that's
but you do have to bring a present.
OK, I'll bring a very, very big bottle of wine. How does that sound?
That sounds absolutely ideal.
Excellent. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.